We are going to hopefully have a special guest tonight. We are having or experiencing a few technical difficulties. So as always, bear with me if you see me looking off camera doing something frantic. I'm probably trying to check something or try to correspond with someone to figure out what's wrong. And I am still kind of fighting a little bit of a cold, so I will still be popping cough drops. My apologies in advance for that. All right, so we're going to start off things a little bit different this episode. We're actually going to start off this episode by actually talking about Picard, the fourth episode of Picard. I don't have a little fancy graphic actually prepared for it, other than we'll use our main feature one graphic here. Eric will show the screen. So we're going to start off talking about the latest episode of Star Trek Picard. This is episode 4. So tell me, Eric, how did you feel about the episode Absolute Candor? And please feel free to display absolute candor.
Well, what can I say? We tried to start out a little bit spoiler free, so with general impressions. So if any of you out there that are viewing this haven't seen the episode and don't want to be spoiled, we'll give you some general impressions first before we get into sort of the deep dive of the episode. So my overall impression is that it's probably about the same level as episode 3 for me. For me right now, the low point is episode 2. I really hated that episode. But this episode, I think, was more on par with episode 3. There were some things I really didn't like. I'm liking Raffi less and less. Like every time I see her, I just don't like kind of her tone and the way, just her attitude towards Picard. It seems very dismissive, which seems to be the general attitude of the characters towards Picard in general. It's kind of interesting. It's weird to me because there seems to be this kind of Picard hate fest going on in the world of Star Trek Picard. Everybody seems to have a problem with him. Sometimes for reasons that don't make any sense, they have a problem with him. It's for me as a hardcore Trekkie, it's very, I don't know, it's very off-putting to me. That they keep treating him like garbage.
Right.
And Raffi in particular, even after they kind of come to some sort of obvious meeting of the mind, she's on the mission, she still kind of treats him like he's like a senile old man, which I guess he will be. I mean, we know he has some sort of senility dementia problem that he's going to be experiencing. We know that from All Good Things. And we know that from the series itself, where he met with his doctor from in a previous episode, he met with his doctor from the Stargazer, and they reinforced that concept, which I also thought was kind of weird because it's like we all know that already. But I mean, okay, but that's okay. So yeah, I didn't hate this episode. I'll say that I didn't hate this episode. I wasn't thrilled with a lot of the interaction of the characters with Picard. Like I said, Picard just seems to be hated by everybody in the universe at this point. But as far as the story goes, it was okay. We got 2 new characters in this. Well, one's an old character, and we got a new character in this. And I have some interest in both of them. I'm not totally like I'm not like I don't care. I mean, I'm interested. They introduced some elements in this one that are kind of that could be fascinating. We can talk about them a little bit more in the deep dive. But my overall impression is I didn't hate it, but I didn't. The attitude towards Picard is very off-putting to me as a hardcore fan. I have a problem with that.
Well, my feelings about the episode was it was okay. I'm going to say something a bit, maybe potentially like something that other people would agree with, put it that way. Maybe a little bit questionable lapse in judgment. There's a few episodes of Star Trek Discovery, in honesty, I liked better than some of these episodes of Picard. you know, this episode was fine. I enjoyed seeing the old school Romulan. We're avoiding spoilers. Just overall impression. It was fine. That's going to be my entire takeaway from this particular episode. I liked it better. I liked it better than the second episode. I would agree with you. The second episode for me is also the lowest point in the show. I did not like the second episode. I like some of the dynamic between some of the characters, the scientist, doctor character, the artificial life expert, the synth expert lady. Like I kind of like her. She's kind of fun and interesting. I like the captain of the ship.
I think it's fair. I think it's fair to say with her though, whether you like it or not, she's kind of like the comic relief of the team.
Yeah. Yeah, she definitely is. And I like the captain's. I like There's a lot of things going on with the captain that I like. I like the captain of the ship. I can't remember the name of the ship half the time. This is another episode that I watched once, and I just didn't want to watch it again.
You're talking about Rios, right? The captain is Rios.
Yeah, Rios. Pilot. I like Rios. Yeah,
I don't have a problem with Rios, and I am kind of fascinated by what he's done with his emergency holograms and the fact that they're all him.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I really like that and how they're very different. So the show has some things that I am enjoying, and some things like I did not dislike one of the newer characters that was introduced in this episode. I didn't know how I was going to feel about it, but when I saw what they were doing about it, again, we're avoiding spoilers. I kind of liked some of that. But in terms of the episode as a whole, it's still better than the second episode. I don't think it's better than the first episode. I think I might have liked this one maybe a little bit better than the third episode. So I'd have to say, besides the first episode, this is probably my favorite. But I don't know. The show for me is not bad. It's interesting. But I do agree with you. I am finding some of the attitude towards Picard to be very, very off-putting. And it's hard for me to understand why, everyone who knows who Picard is apparently has an issue with him. It's getting kind of old. You know what I mean? Like, even
that's my biggest gripe.
Yeah,
I'm kind of getting sick of it.
Yeah. This whole the Federation sucks is, I enjoy the show when they're not picking on the Federation. And unfortunately, they pick on the Federation a lot. They find a lot of time to take the Federation out of the shed and hit it with a stick and then push it back into the shed. So I would like for them to be done with that. So that's my official review. It was okay. I liked it. I still don't think any of them is as good as the first. I like the first episode probably the best. I feel like I'm missing like the visions of Brent Spiner.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
I wish we get more visions of Brent Spiner. So like,
why not? Why not?
Yeah, so that's kind of my thing.
Yeah, it's kind of like Yeah, I agree with you in terms of ranking of the episodes. I do think episode 1 is the best episode so far. It's the best episode I've seen. That first scene is my favorite scene so far in Picard. The scene of Data and Picard sitting together, playing cards on the Enterprise D. Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed that. And even though there were some issues I had with the episode, so far it's really my favorite episode of Star Trek Picard. So I would agree with you in terms of kind of ranking the episodes. One is the best so far. 2 is really the low point of the series so far, and 4 is better than 2 at least.
Yeah, I would have to say, like I said, for me, I liked this one probably about the best. I enjoyed the action that was in it, but again, we're trying to avoid spoilers, so I can't talk too much more about it because I'm already fighting the urge to kind of spoil something as it currently sits. And I want to do. Is that good for Picard?
Well, we're going to get the spoilers, right?
Okay, spoilers. So spoil. All right, spoiler time. Okay. All right. So now we're going to talk spoilers for obviously for Star Trek Picard. So if you haven't seen the episode, if you don't want to know any spoilers, now is the time to look away or go get something to drink for a couple minutes and come right back because we have a great show planned tonight. So we're getting Picard kind of taken care of here on the front end, and then we're going to get into our other topics. I don't want to spend too much more time on that because I'm already talking it to death. So let's see spoilers.
Should we introduce our special guest? It looks like he's ready to go.
Yes.
Go ahead and introduce him.
Let's do that. I want to welcome to the show. This is Professor Hugo Strange. He is coming to us from some undisclosed location deep in the bowels of Arkham Asylum. I want to welcome you to the show, Professor, or Dr. Hugo Strange. My bad.
It's Doctor.
Yes, sorry about that. So Dr. Hugo Strange is here with us. We're going to be discussing the enigmatic Clown Prince of Crime later in the episode, also known as the Joker. And Dr. Hugo Strange has been gracious enough to come on the show, and he is going to help us discuss. He's one of your former patients. Is that correct, Doctor?
Yes, he's one of my former patients, unfortunately.
All right, very cool. We appreciate you and glad to have you here on the show. So we're going to finish talking about Picard here, Dr. Strange, if that's okay.
That's fine. You can speak about him. All he's doing is clamoring to get back on a ship.
All right. Well, there you go. Spoilers for Picard. Do you mind if I go first, Eric?
Go ahead.
I love what they're doing with Rios with the different holograms. Just the different, and I really like that actor. For me, he is probably the standout on the show so far. I hope that his tragic Starfleet background isn't something that really makes me cringe, because right now I really like his character. The new character, I think, was it Elnor? The Romulan elfin guy. I like the fact that they're echoing back to Dune and the idea of the God, I can't believe I can't remember what it's called. Because there's the Order of the Sisterhood in Dune, and it seems like they're echoing back to that. That stuff's kind of interesting. I liked his character just fine. I like the doctor, the female scientist character. She's interesting. The synth expert is really I'm enjoying her character. I could take or leave Raffi at this point. It's really getting on my nerves. Kind of like what you were saying earlier. I love the introduction of the Romulan Warbird, the old style Romulan Warbird, and I really like that battle sequence. I thought that was kind of fun, where you see Rios flying the ship. Rios, for me, is the character that's standing out to me. I really like Rios. And in terms of what was revealed in the episode, we didn't really get a whole lot revealed. Just Picard went to the planet. He picked up this essentially Romulan warrior nun assassin character, and then they battled the bird of prey. I found the battle sequence to be fun, and then of course the big twist at the end. 7 of 9 is on the ship. They do mention the Fenris Rangers, and then eventually she shows up later in the episode and actually helps them actually take out the prey. All that stuff was fun. And like I said, I like this. This is probably one of the better episodes to me. First episode's still the best. And that's all my thoughts. I like Rios. I enjoy the action sequence. The new characters, kind of interesting. I like the fact they're harkening back to Dune. That's all I got. What about you, Eric?
All right. Well, let's start at the beginning. So the sort of, I guess, interesting reveal, if you could call it, that we start out with is we find out where Picard was when the Utopian Planitia starship yards, the dock yards, the where they were building the ships. We find out where Picard was when the attack happened. And apparently he was at a planet where they were already resettling Romulans.
Right.
The supernova hadn't occurred yet. They were in the process. Picard was still an admiral, although for some reason he shows up in civilian clothes, which I didn't quite understand that. That whole look was a little weird to me. It was very like, Panama, I don't know.
Very Panama Jack.
Yeah, that's exactly
exactly
it. Yeah, I thought that was a little weird. It's like, okay, he's still in Starfleet. Why can't we just see him in his uniform at least one more time? You know what I mean? So that irritated me a little bit. But anyway, he goes down to the planet. We establish this relationship with these Romulan warrior nuns we've never heard about before, but apparently have been around forever. And they're the bestest warriors in the universe. That's from Kurtzman, by the way, because that's what Kurtzman said in the Ready Room. Is he actually said they're the best in the universe, which is okay. Yeah, whatever. All right, because obviously Kurtzman made them, so they have to be the best, right? Obviously, that was probably his contribution to the episode. That kind of stuff annoys me. I don't think you have to make your show better by dismissing previous incarnations in previous shows and say, "Oh, I came up with this idea. They're the best. They're better than the Klingons, better than the Jem'Hadar, all that kind of stuff."
Right.
That
we do have
it's not necessary. It's not necessary. Oh, Bobby's back. He said, "The hat killed me."
Yeah. Like I said, very Panama Jack.
Well, I just don't see why we couldn't see him in uniform one last time, because I don't think we're ever going to see him in uniform again. I think what we got in episode 2, which is my least favorite episode, that's all we're going to get if Picard in the new uniform, in the new, which I thought was really cool looking. I actually liked the Admiral uniform that he had. So anyway, he's on the planet. We establish this relationship with these warrior nuns, and the fact that apparently they have sort of adopted this Romulan orphan. We assume he's an orphan. They don't specifically state that, but obviously that's what it sounds like. And it's kind of a weird situation because it's an all-female group, but they're taking care of this boy. And it's under the premise that Picard is eventually going to get him resettled somewhere else. That's kind of the premise, that this is a temporary thing. Well, of course, what happens, right off the bat, Picard realizes that the shipyards have been destroyed. He needs to get back to work. He needs to leave. And apparently that's it. He never comes back, which I was like, why would Picard do that? Why wouldn't he at least come back to explain the situation, even if he wasn't in Starfleet? It's a weird thing that he just dropped everything and didn't come back and at least tell them what was going on. Apparently he never came back. That was the last time he saw this character that I have on the screen, the Romulan boy, which I can't remember his name.
Elnor. Isn't it Elnor? I think it's Elnor.
I get him confused with the Lord of the Rings character, so
it's not Elrond.
So I want to say Elrond. I always want to say Elrond because he looks exactly like Elrond. So anyway,
it's Elnor.
We find out that apparently the relationship between the two was strong. This boy really liked Picard. Picard was teaching him about fencing and the Three Musketeers and things like that. And there was sort of a father-son relationship developing, but Picard just threw that all away when he decided to leave Starfleet. And he never came back to even check on these people or explain his actions or anything. So now we advance to the current time frame, and Picard has decided he needs to go back to this planet because he thinks those warrior nuns can help him, which makes sense. He needs some muscle. Supposedly these warrior nuns are the best fighters in the universe. Again, that's from Kurtzman. So he's going over to them.
The Space League of Assassins? That's what you're telling me?
Space Assassins?
Oh, no, I haven't seen this yet.
Yes, Dr. Strange. They're sort of like the League of Assassins in space.
That's a good way to put it, right? Yeah, they're like the League of Assassins.
League of Assassins in space.
There you go. That's a good way to explain them. So,
but there's no Ra's al Ghul, there's no Merlin, but there are, I don't know what you want to call them, elves. There are elves. They're elves afoot.
They're elves. Yeah, exactly.
Well, it already sounds to me like you already have a Wayne and a Robin, Picard and the boy.
That's true. It's a good observation.
That is
Thank
a
you,
good
Doctor.
observation. That is a good observation. So apparently, Picard goes to this planet wanting to enlist the help of these warrior nuns, get one of them to help him. But apparently, the way they operate is you have to basically tell them your quest. And they actually use the word quests, which was a little bit cringe to me because there's a lot of Lord of the Rings references going on here, and it's like, okay, guys, I get it. You know what I mean? So just stop, please. But he explains that he has to, the way that these nuns operate, you don't hire them with money or barter or anything. They basically, you have to tell them your story, and then they decide whether you're worthy of their assistance or not. So that's basically what's bringing Picard to this planet. That's what he's trying to do. So meanwhile, of course, we still have the Borg cube, which I don't think you touched on that at all, Dave, which is we have the what's going on the Borg cube. And we're kind of finding out, I guess, a little bit more about what the Super Tal Shiar mission is on the Borg cube.
Yes,
so,
the Super Tal Shiar.
Yeah, the Super Tal Shiar. I have to say, there were some really cringeworthy scenes on that Borg cube. The scene where they were doing the sock thing and running around the Borg cube like, these. I mean, that was bad. I mean, that was just bad. Where they're running around with using their socks to slide across the room. To show how in love they are. I guess I don't know what that scene was.
That whole scene was awful. I mean, they've got the dramatic music swells. We're supposed to care. Because at first he's talking about like a Borg initiation, and he's taking her into the ship, and I was like, what is he going to show her? And then when they do this, I'm like, okay, this is stupid. This is stupid.
Well, the second he said Borg initiation, I knew that, or ritual or whatever he said, I was like, okay, whatever's going to happen is going to be really stupid. They're either going to actually show the Borg doing something completely stupid that we never knew. But then what we got was, no, he's just fooling around with her and he does this stupid thing. And, they're so in love. You know what I mean? I guess is what that scene was supposed to, even though they met, yesterday? Of course, they're already sleeping together and all that stuff. So, whatever,
Yeah,
so,
it was bad. It was bad. I get it. You're trying to show us that they're falling in love or whatever, but I didn't buy it.
I didn't buy it at all. I didn't buy it at all. So anyway, the other thing that we find out is we do get.
I need to put them in here.
I'm sorry, say that again, Doctor.
So it sounds like I need to put them in here and admit them.
Yeah, yeah. They could probably use some psychiatric, some psychoanalysis at least, I'd say.
Well, that's kind of what's supposed to be going on, right? I mean, because they have all these crazy Romulans that were apparently their assimilation was botched somehow, which we don't find out. We still don't know why. That's right now. That's what Soji's trying to do. Is he's trying to find out why these Romulans went insane when they were assimilated instead of actually got assimilated. Apparently, they're in between, and so they were never properly assimilated into the Borg collective, and now they're all just crazy. Unlike the other Borg, where they're able to just take the Borg parts out and they're a person again. Like Q. Something's wrong with the Romulans, and these were the last people that were actually assimilated by this particular cube, because obviously this cube fell into Romulan hands. The last contact the Borg cube had when it was functioning with was the Romulan scout vessel, and that's where all these crazy Romulans. So she's trying to figure that out. But in the midst of all this, we get to see that the undercover operative, the sister of our Super Tal Shiar, and she's also a Super Tal Shiar or whatever. And man, that's some pretty cringe-worthy incest stuff going on there, don't you think? With the two of them,
that's pretty weird.
It's very weird. You talk about psychoanalyzing that. Apparently, the two of them are it looks like they're lovers. The brother and sister of the Super Tal Shiar. I don't know why that's in there. I don't know if that's going to become relevant later, but it's weird. Is
their last name Lannister?
That might be why they did that. I really think, because we're talking about Dune references, we're talking about Lord of the Ring references. I could buy that's basically just a ripoff from Game of Thrones. Because they want to throw all this edgy stuff into it because incest is so hip now. You know what I mean? Because of Game of Thrones.
That's an interesting way to put that. Incest is hip now.
Oh, why is it there? I'm like,
I don't know.
Why is that there? Why even go there? In Star Trek, you know what I mean? Come on, that's not Trek. That's like Game of Thrones. You know what I mean? So
right.
So that stuff is really weird. I will say I am interested in this idea of what did happen to these Romulans. Did the assimilation go bad somehow? Was it deliberate, where they actually wanted to be assimilated? Maybe they were trying to put like a virus on the cube to disable it, but that went wrong too. You know what I mean? So I am curious about that particular story. But I'll be honest.
Can I throw this out there? Because we've talked about some of my crazy outlandish theories. This is what I thought this is what I thought they had an issue with Picard. I thought it was going to be revealed at some point that they still did manage to evacuate a large percentage of the Romulan people, but that the only person that Picard could go to that could help facilitate this was going to essentially be the Borg. There was going to be some kind of understanding, some kind of truce, some kind of agreement. And that was going to be why we had a Borg cube and the Romulans were on it. And there was some sort of I thought that's what I thought somehow that was going to be like a thing. So as we get further into Picard, and it turns out that he just quit and whatever happened.
Right.
I kept waiting for there to be some kind of reveal that the Romulans appealed to the Borg, and that's why they have this co-op station. Now, of course, I know that somehow they got possession of it and they're using it for whatever, scientific research, and they're selling off the parts of the Borgs and stuff. I mean, I get all that. They've shown us that, but I kept thinking somehow there was going to be a connection that because I thought that was going to better explain why the Borg was integrated into the show to the level that they are. That somehow they had something to do with the evacuation. Because if we want to recast characters in a different light, I don't know. It's a crazy theory.
What I thought, honestly, was just that this is the aftermath of what Janeway did to the collective, and that the cubes are all disabled. That's what I thought. That's not true, by the way. I think Shaban actually said, no, there are still Borg that are Borg and running around assimilating people. Just this particular cube is disabled, and we'll find out why later. We have a comment from the chat going back to our discussion of the Super Tal Shiar, which Katie is correcting me because it's the Zot Vash. All right,
there you go.
That's the Super Tal Shiar. So she says maybe the Zot Vash consider themselves to be brothers and sisters, quote unquote. In other words, they're brothers and sisters in the Zot Vash. That's possible. I mean, I would hope so. You know what I mean? If that's the case, I'm okay with that. If that's the case, that they just all call each other brothers and sisters because they take some sort of oath, the way that you do in the military, the way they do in a police department, they'll say brothers and sisters and stuff like that. In that context, I'm okay with it. That's not what we're being presented with, Katie. I just want to put that out there, that's not how it's being framed. It's being framed very creepy that this is not okay. That's actually the way it's being framed. But she also goes on to say, if not, it reminded me of the Borg. I'm going to butcher this. The Borgias. The Borgias. There we go. So we've got someone educated in the panel today. So
yes, thank you.
and I'm going to butcher those two names too. Is it Lucretia and Caesari? Those two characters, which I do know a little bit about that. I mean, obviously, when it comes to royals and things like that, there is a lot of history of incest and things like that, and that's what Game of Thrones was going off of. Game of Thrones was incorporating that whole royals do this. Romans did it. You know what I mean? They keep the bloodlines pure. But this context, it just seems weird. I hope Katie's theory is correct, and they just everybody calls each other brother and sister, but that's not the way this is being framed. I just want to point that out too.
Interesting.
I want to thank so as well.
So I want to thank the people who participated in the chat. Are we good with Picard now? Because I don't know if I want to throw a promo thing in Picard, the Picard clip.
Well, I do have more to say about Picard.
Okay, go right ahead.
Because we have to get into it ends on a high note. So the episode actually ends on a good note. So
it was great to see Seven finally.
Yeah, we got to see Seven. But leading up to that was pretty interesting, I thought. So what we're presented with is apparently there are some sort of pirates that exist in this quadrant of space. It's not part of the Federation. It doesn't sound like. It's like it could be in the neutral zone. I would think there wouldn't really be a neutral zone anymore because the Romulan Empire's kind of fallen apart. So we don't know exactly where this place is, where Picard is going to get the assistance of the nuns. And so what ends up happening, of course, is instead of getting one of the nuns to help him, he gets the boy to help him because the boy doesn't belong there anyway, but they've trained him, which is kind of cool. Right. So even though traditionally these are all women, these are women warriors, this is like the one exception. The little boy is now one of them, essentially, but not because he can never be one of them because he's a male. And I do right. Get that. That I thought was kind of cool. It put him like in this kind of interesting situation where he's almost tailor-made to help Picard, And so,
depending upon how they want to frame his story, it gives us an interesting way to explore the idea of identity and how much your identity is sort of wrapped up, quote unquote, in your gender. So right. there is some interesting ideas to explore there.
No, I liked it. Sure. I thought it was. Yeah. I thought there were some interesting ideas there because, again, even though he essentially is one of them, he's good enough to be one of them, but he can't be one of them because he's a guy. So I thought was interesting. You know what I mean? He just can't. He'll never be accepted by them because he's a guy. So Picard tells him his situation, what's been going on, and at first he's still angry at Picard. The reason that this episode is called Absolute Candor is because this particular order they are the opposite of Romulans because Romulans are all about secrets and deception, and these particular Romulans always tell you what's on the forefront of their mind. They just spit it out. So they have absolute candor. They don't have a filter. They don't filter what they say, which is also kind of neat. It's kind of shows why these particular Romulans wouldn't get along with the other Romulans. They don't act like anybody else in Romulan society because Romulan society is all based on secrets and lies. That's what Romulan society is. That's why we have the Tal Shiar and the Super Tal Shiar, otherwise known as the Zavash. Okay, so that's the basis, the cornerstone of their society. So it is kind of neat to see that. Yeah, I mean, you're going to have people that are different. We've seen that they have people that are different. We had the people that were the part of for unification, Spock's people, Spock's movement. We know there's dissidents in Romulan society. So I like that. I thought that was kind of cool. And then eventually what happens is, even though at first the male character doesn't want to help Picard, what ends up happening is Picard goes and picks a fight, which I thought was kind of weird. So
I did think that was a little strange when he walked over and he threw the sign down, and
because apparently what's happening is
very because he part of the tenor of the show is the reason he left Starfleet is because Starfleet was no longer Starfleet.
Right.
Well, going over there and throwing that sign down and walking in somewhere he's obviously not welcome, that's not very prime directive. I mean, now he's not interfering with their society in a major way, but that kind of goes against the tenets of what Starfleet believed. Like, I mean, I understand it's not socially acceptable to discriminate against people, but I just thought that was to me it seems slightly out of character for Picard.
It's not Trek. That's the problem. It's a construct that works in our world, and we understand it in the context of our world, and that essentially this is Jim Crow. I mean, this is segregation that's going on this Romulan planet because, well, because they feel abandoned. I mean, that's really
Right.
what comes out of it too, is because they feel that the Federation betrayed them. And it sounds
Right.
like they have good reason to think that. Okay, so they don't want to interact with humans. They don't want to interact with other worlds. There was a mention that there's sort of like this movement going on that particular colony, and I can't remember what they called it. It was like the New Romulan Movement or something like that. I can't remember what the term was, but they threw that out there that apparently there are Romulan survivors who are starting to like feel like, hey, we need to just stay away from other races now and be isolationists and all that kind of stuff. So it's going both ways, interestingly enough. So you got the Federation's becoming quote unquote more isolationist, and apparently some of the Romulans feel exactly the same way. They don't want anything to do with off-worlders or non-Romulans either. So Picard, of course, doesn't like this. So he goes into this tavern that clearly says Romulans only, takes the sign down, and sits down as if that's going to be okay and nobody's going to make an issue of it. And of course, what ends up happening is they decide that they're going to challenge him to a fight and basically kill him because he's an old man. But Picard refuses to fight. So Picard refuses to fight, and what happens is the Romulan. Again, I cannot stop thinking of the Lord of the Rings elf character, and I keep screwing his name up. It's Elnor, right? Elnor.
We've got another comment from Katie. Yeah, I think it's Elnor. But there you go. Romulan
Good catch,
rebirth.
Katie. Yeah, the
Thank you,
Romulan
Katie.
rebirth movement. That's what it was. Katie's got it. The Romulan rebirth movement, which I thought was interesting. I do think that's kind of interesting and makes sense that the Romulans would feel that way because they feel abandoned and they don't really want anything to do with the Federation or other aliens in general. They just don't want anything to do with them. I get that. That makes sense to me. But Picard kind of picking this fight, it's too contemporary. It's not really Trek. It's something maybe we would do. You know what I mean? As a contemporary American or whatever. But it's not something that really makes a whole lot of sense in the context of Trek. And he should know he's going to cause trouble. And then he's not willing to face the consequence of that. He's like, no, I'm not going to fight you. You know what I mean? Well, you picked a fight, Picard. You know, what did you expect was going to happen? So he refuses to fight, but the other character comes in.
It's Elnor. It is Elnor.
Elnor. Okay. Elnor comes in and he rescues Picard and kills everybody. Kills the guy that was going to fight Picard. Chops his head off.
Cuts his head right off.
And so now we know he's a badass. Okay, we obviously know he's a badass. I do think it's weird that he runs around with a sword. They kind of even joke with that in the show, because did you notice that the one guy's like, okay, yeah, screw this. Let's see you dodge disruptor fire, and then they beamed him out. It was almost like the Indiana Jones moment. You know what I mean?
Here's the thing that's interesting, yet kind of slightly odd. I found about all that. Okay, they're doing a lot of stuff with Alexander Dumas, Three Musketeers. Okay. And it reminded me of Musketeers in an extent, like the way some of the Romulans were outfitted, like they had pistols and swords. Like you could have seen a Musketeer, of course, having, a saber or something, and having I forget what the second blade. Our expert might know more about this than me at this current stage of my life. I know more about the Japanese versions, but having a long sword, having a smaller sword for parrying, and then maybe having a flintlock pistol, right?
Right, Musketeers.
And I kept seeing that, and I was like, oh, okay, I get it. But at the same point, too, I thought it was weird. We've never seen Romulans running around with swords before.
No.
We haven't had swords being an important part of Romulan culture. That's a Klingon thing. With the what is it? I forget what the double bladed, the sword of Kalis and all that. Like that to me.
The batleth. The Klingon
the batleth. It just I thought it was. We've never seen that associated. Now we haven't spent a lot of time exploring Romulan culture, so and the history. Maybe that's always been there. But I just personally, I just thought it was weird because it just felt like a Klingon thing. It's like all of a sudden we're taking a Klingon thing and we're going to give it to the Romulans. So
yeah, but they did play around with it because I thought it was funny, because at the end of that sequence, one of the other guys is like, well, screw this sword stuff. I'm just going to shoot you. And then they get beamed up. It was
Right,
it was almost going to be an Indiana Jones moment, with the swordsmith. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then like, okay, screw this. I'm just going to shoot him. Which
Yeah.
is why we don't use swords anymore, even now, and we're nowhere near Star Trek. You know what I mean? Swords
Right.
are not an effective weapon, folks, in terms of actual, combat in this time period. If your opponent has a gun, so that they're just not. They're also too conspicuous.
I know a few who disagree.
Well, if your opponent has a gun, they're not effective because they're too conspicuous, and anybody with a gun is just going to shoot you. Okay, a knife, it makes a little bit more sense because you can conceal a knife. You can get close to somebody without them knowing that you have a knife, and they're still effective weapons. But in terms of actual real life combat, we haven't used swords in combat for a long time, a very long time, and it just seems odd to me that that's what they use. This order hasn't apparently adapted to the technology of the times, because he doesn't carry a disruptor, which I thought is really weird. You'd think he'd at least have a disruptor, even if he is into the sword thing,
Dr. Strange, on the streets of Gotham, have you noticed that swords are used almost equally with firearms, or is the firearm the primary weapon in Gotham?
Firearms definitely the primary weapon in Gotham. If a person walks out with a sword, they better know how to use it. Or they're going to be dropped really fast. Slade? I mean, it's Slade. Come on.
You're talking about the Deathstroke the Terminator, for maybe our viewers who are not terribly familiar with a lot of the personalities you have running around in Gotham. Are you referring to Deathstroke, Dr. Strange?
Yes, I'm referring to Deathstroke the Terminator.
Cool. Thank you, sir.
But then again, he does have superhuman reflexes, so guns really are not effective against him. Yeah.
Interesting.
So it's a little different in Picard, as far as all that goes. In fact, even Raffi makes fun of him.
Good.
Remember, Raffi makes fun of him and says, "Oh, you brought a boy with a stick." She said that you brought a boy with a stick.
I'm trying to tune Raffi out, though. I'm just trying to tune Raffi out. Whenever Raffi's talking, I'm looking at my phone. I really don't like that character. I really don't. I hope she grows on me.
She's pretty nasty, honestly. She's pretty mean to pretty much everybody, So other than Rios, apparently she has a relationship with Rios, but she said something, messed up about the scientist lady. First thing she says to Raffi is something insulting. That's apparently she meets someone and she just insults them. That's apparently what future humans do now. That's not very
well.
true.
That's what her character does.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't like her character.
So now this does get us
to
to
from Gotham.
Yeah.
We don't know that. She could be from Gotham.
True.
She could
that's
be.
True.
We don't know. She could be from Gotham.
A lot. The attitude,
would explain a
drug
lot.
use problem, the violence. It would explain
in fact,
a lot.
It would make it might turn out that she spent some time in Arkham Asylum. We're going to find that out later. That is possible. They haven't said no. It's possible. We're going to find out that she actually did spend some time in Arkham Asylum. We do have a comment. So Raffi is one note and it's getting old. And you are right, Bobby. I agree with you 100%. She is one note and it's getting old. She insults everybody. And it's like this, again, it's like, this isn't your dad's Trek. You know what I mean? This isn't your dad's Trek. That's kind of what the response, I think, is. It's like, yeah, well, okay. Obviously it's not. I get that.
We all got the message. Thank you very much.
I got it loud and clear.
It loud and
clear. That this is not my dad's Trek, which is really sad because my dad introduced me to Trek. But whatever, But we do get on the ship. We get back on the ship, and we have an attack in space. We have a space battle. We actually have a space battle.
My favorite scene in this episode. I really enjoyed this whole thing with Rios. And he's got another hologram he called up. It's like his whole crew is hologram versions of himself.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's very just sort of like leaning on the console and just unamused. And Rios is my favorite character. I like that whole bit that was a lot of fun. And where they're flying around and you see the inertia on the ship, it just I loved all that. That was a lot of fun. And that go ahead.
Did you watch The Ready Room? Because he was the actor featured on The Ready Room.
No, I didn't. I after the last one, I was just like, I don't know if I want to watch this.
Well, you like Rios, so you're going to like that episode because that's what the episode's about.
I'll check it out.
And he talks about that whole aspect, which I do kind of find fascinating. This idea, because at first you think he doesn't have a crew. It's just him.
Right.
It's like, no, he has a crew. They're just all holograms of himself and different versions of himself. Yeah. So he has a crew. They're just all holograms. So I think that's kind of a neat idea. I like it. I know he loves it because he talked about in the interview that he gets to play all these different versions of himself, different versions of this character, different accents, different looks. Yeah. So as an actor, he's gotta love it,
I love that whole thing they're doing with him and the holograms on the ship. That stuff, to me, that stuff's a winner. I loved every minute of all that. I like even the previous episode, we had the one who he's like the what is it, the holodeck concierge type character. Like all that stuff is really fun for me. I've enjoyed everything with him. So
I know this reference, Bobby. Yeah. Reminds me of Herman's Head. It does remind me a little bit of Herman's Head.
Yeah,
it actually does.
It's cool.
It reminds me more of Booster Gold.
Booster Gold.
Oh, okay.
But I like that aspect. I think it's interesting. The only thing I don't like is that he's a little like dismissive and kind of rude to the holograms, which again is not very Trek. But it is what it is. It's still fun. I know it's got to be fun for him. So it's got to be a dream job for him because he gets to play so many different characters on the show. Essentially, it's so that's neat, and it makes sense. It does make sense, in Star Trek that people would do that. That they would have ships, and instead of having to deal with an alien or human crew, that they would just make a bunch of holograms. Why not? They can do that. We've seen that before. That holograms can do these kinds of things. So that's kind of cool. I did like that, and the entire sequence, as far as the space combat, was pretty cool. Obviously, we have the Picard ship. They're fighting with this Romulan ship that apparently has been taken over by pirates, and a mysterious ship appears to help them. And earlier in the episode, early in the episode, Picard had specifically stated that this planet was supposed to be under the protection of the Fenris Rangers. But apparently they pulled out. But apparently they didn't all pull out. So this ship appears. We don't know who's in it at first. The ship assists them, but in doing so, that ship is destroyed. So they beam the pilot aboard, and it is 7 of 9, which is obviously the high point of the episode. Fans are totally excited about this. That Seven's finally on the show. She's on the ship. Which is kind of cool. We know from other information that she is one of the Fenris Rangers, so I'm guessing she was responding to this battle, that kind of a thing. We'll find out later. That's one thing. We don't really find out anything about Seven other than she was in this ship and apparently decided to assist Picard's ship against these known pirates. So it's cool to have her back. I know this is something that fans have been waiting for. It took us 4 episodes to get there, and we only get a little snippet, but at least she's on board, and that's definitely a high note of this episode. It ends on a high note.
Yeah, that was that whole ending sequence. I enjoyed all of it, and it was a lot of fun to see Seven, and I hope that she's going to be like part of the crew for a little while at least. I mean, I'd love for her to be a regular.
My biggest concern about the legacy characters is they're just cameos, and we kind of have already seen that with Brent Spiner. Data's relevant. I mean, he is relevant to the story, but I don't think we're going to see any more Data. I think that's it. And I really wanted him to be more involved. And I did too. I don't want the legacy characters to just be glorified cameos. So I hope she's part of the crew now. That's my hope, is she's part of the crew, and she's going to be with them going forward. For the next 6 episodes. We only have 6 episodes left. That's it.
Yep.
We're almost halfway through this already.
Reminds me of Crisis. It was full of legacy cameos.
Yes, that's true.
All they did was just put people in there to die.
Yeah,
that's true.
Exactly. So I don't want that. I don't want to see Seven die in the next episode in the first scene. Okay, if they do something like that, they're gonna alienate a ton of the fan base. So
there's
we'll
a lot of people
do.
tuning in for Seven. So
absolutely.
I hope they have enough sense not to do something that's stupid.
So I mean, Twitter was going insane.
Yeah.
Twitter was going insane with people reacting to Seven finally being on the show, because it took a while. End of the fourth episode, we only see her for like 5 seconds. So hopefully they do her character justice, and she'll do some cool things and contribute to the next episode. We know what's gonna. The next episode, apparently, we're going to another planet to find Maddox. So we'll see. Apparently, we may find Maddox in episode 5. That's the next mission. That's what they're all going to be doing now. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, it'd be interesting. I actually, it's not your dad's Trek. I actually rewatched some original series episodes, and I actually watched a couple of Next Gen episodes. I had them on while I was doing different things, and one of the episodes I rewatched was Brothers, because I'm really hoping that your theory that somehow lore is behind all this. Like, it'd be really interesting if they think they're going to go find Bruce Maddox, and Bruce Maddox isn't who they find.
Yeah.
That would be kind of fun, and that would be definitely a different, interesting way to incorporate Brent Spiner into the show a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And I think that would be interesting.
Yeah, I think it'd be very interesting. I think Spiner would like to do it too, because I think he liked playing lore a lot, and it would be kind of interesting too. As I thought about this, I'm not saying this is my theory. I'm just saying it would be cool if they did this, because these synths are actually biological except for the positronic brain. It would be kind of neat if Lore had done that, and so now he's aged, and then you don't even have to worry about that. You know what I mean? Because now he's a biological with he just has the positronic brain. That would be kind of neat. And then you could even get rid of the makeup if you wanted. You know what I mean? It could just be like, no, this is how I look now. You know what I mean? Because I'm a biological now. You know what I mean? So, but I don't think they're going to do that. I mean, I think it would be so cool if they did, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
From all the discussions earlier, it sounds like if anything's going to be cool, it's not going to
happen. That's one way to look at it. It's the way to look at it, Doctor.
That's kind of the way it's been so far. Again, I'm hoping 7 is kick-ass and fun, and we'll see how her story plays out. So that's definitely what a lot of fans are hoping for. So we'll see.
Yeah. Is that good for Picard?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, cool. All right.